We hear frequently about the overall death toll in the US from COVID. And depending on who you look, like you could go and search right now, you might hear 250,000 deaths, 255,000 deaths. It really does matter. I go with the COVID tracking project generally, which showed yesterday that 2,733 people had died, although other trackers say over 3,000 just yesterday. And so your overall number can definitely change based on who you talk to. But at the end of the day, all of those are like the reporting of individual states, which is the reporting of individual hospitals for people that have been technically classified as having died with COVID. The thing is, as we've talked about every once in a while during the pandemic, that is not actually a count of how many people COVID has killed, because many people don't get classified with it. They don't end up in the hospital, they die, perhaps alone at their homes. Now, one way that we can get to an actual number of the deaths is to figure out how many excess deaths there are. So we look over a number of years and say, how many people generally die at this particular time? And if the number is significantly higher now, much higher than can be accounted for by the official COVID count, then barring some other better explanation, that might indicate that those people have actually died, although it will never be tracked as such, from COVID. And so much earlier on in the pandemic, we looked at some of these analyses and tried to figure out how many people died. Well, now we're much farther into it. And that means, unfortunately, that the excess deaths have continued to pile up. Overall, deaths nationwide were 19% higher than normal from March 15th to November 14th, the span that the analyses currently cover. Altogether, the analysis shows that 345,000 more people than normal have died in the US during that period, a number that may be an undercount since recent death statistics are still being updated. That doesn't include the massive rise over the past couple of weeks, by the way. But if this pattern holds through effectively yesterday, the total death toll would be about 380,000. Which means, no, look, some of those people might have died of other causes. And if people would like to come up with some explanation that makes sense considering the pandemic, sure, feel free. But a significant portion of those people did die due to COVID, which means that the overall number that we've been talking about that is horrifying for people who take this seriously is a massive undercount. Not by a few hundred, not by a few thousand, but potentially by 100,000 or more additional deaths, Jason.
Yeah, John, just by hearing that, never in my life, it's just so unfathomable to think that this is happening to us. Of course, we grow up hearing about the flu and bubonic plague and all of these things that have ravaged humanity in the history, right? In history, but it's just like when they talked about COVID back in February when we were talking about COVID on TYT on the main show, you thought it was going to be something that would be able to get under control quickly, right? That Americans, human beings, we're resilient. We find a way out of everything. Hell, we find a way to stop birth and like things that like Mother Nature has created for us as human beings to engage in, right? And so now, just hearing that number and looking 10 months later as to what has happened to us, how just our country alone, not considering the rest of the world, has been ravaged by COVID. It is hard to wrap your head around. It truly is, and it's more people are going to die. And I never thought in my 41 years on this planet, I would be saying that I have existed or I have survived, thankfully, through a pandemic, right? It sounds so Stephen King novel. It sounds so
it's a movie, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds 28 days later. It's just it's out of control. But I mean, this is our reality, as I said earlier, and it's sad that those numbers are an underrepresentation of the deaths that have happened, and there's sadly going to be even more that are coming in the coming months. It's like, what do you do, man? Like, how do you, like, what do you say and what do you do? Really.
Yeah, you try to get through to people, and it's difficult because it's been so, like everybody says, it's been politicized, which it has, but it's gone beyond it being politicized. It has been turned into the core political identity of millions of Americans to not care about this and to want to prove to the people around them who don't care about it that I care about it as little as you do. And I'm going to willingly endanger my life and the life of people around me. And that is freedom and eagles and the flag or whatever. And we're gonna actually have a little bit of that demonstrated later on. I did wanna mention one other thing though. So we're sort of looking back over the span of this pandemic. So one of the things that we talked about a lot earlier on was the potential for massive, like an epidemic effectively of evictions and people having their houses foreclosed on them because of the economic damage. And there has been quite a bit of that. Now, some of it was avoided by the fact that up until, depending on the state, various months, they had eviction moratoriums. So 44 states and Washington, D.C. implemented eviction moratoriums after the pandemic hit, but 27 of them had been lifted by September, and more are passing away between then and now and in the very near future. So the people who have lost their homes, who have been forced to either move or have been like out on the street, effectively not receiving aid because the federal government has effectively told the entire population to go F itself since the very early stage, has exposed those people to dangerous circumstances, including the pandemic. And just recently, actually, researchers of UCLA published a paper earlier this week asserting that evictions between the beginning of the pandemic and the CDC's national eviction moratorium in September led to almost 500,000 additional COVID cases and almost 11,000 additional deaths.
Right. And
the thing is that,
go ahead.
Really fast. That paper came out earlier this week. I saw it on Curbed. I haven't seen other sources really talking about that potentially thousands of additional deaths just from the fact that we decided, yeah, we effectively like held off on your rent payments for a bit, but then you can get kicked out. And by the way, in the vast majority of these cases, all that was a smokescreen. It was saying, we're not gonna let you kick out these people now, but you're just gonna postpone their rent. And many of them are out of work and they're not receiving aid. So they're definitely gonna get evicted once it's done because all of that will have piled up. But it looks good in the meantime. We're not gonna pay for it. That would be tough. We're gonna make it look like we care about people, and thousands died.
I mean, 100%. It's like this. It's this systematic. I don't want to be really dark here, but it's a systematic slaughtering of people, if you will, right? By saying, okay, listen, you're going to be on the street, and sorry for you. We gave you a little bit of help. We did what we could, but that's about it. And also, to couple with that, John, is a lot of the CARES Act and a lot of the things that were put into place this year to help people temporarily are also ending December 31st in a time where, as we just reported, numbers are spiking, numbers are rising. So numbers are rising. So what happens in 90 days from now when that money's gone and they're still unemployed and there is no moratorium on rent and there's tons of evictions? It's just going to add to that number and it's going to add to the dire situation that people are already in. I listen to a lot of different outlets talk about this here in Florida, and it's just like this domino effect, right? It's going, and that is only going to add to the number of cases that are going to be documented and unearthed in 2021 because the money's running out December 31st. Even for myself, I have benefited from the CARES Act, and it's over for me, and I'm still unemployed, right? So it's only going to get increasingly worse before it even can be considered to get better.
Yeah. Even the deal that they're talking about passing right now extends the unemployment benefit for a month,
which is nothing. And depending on which state you live in, luckily California, for people who live in California, that's one of the highest states that gets unemployment benefits. But people living in Florida and places like Montana, New Mexico, $97 a week. What is that?
Yeah, what is that? That's nothing. Yeah, I saw, by the way, as part of the Garcetti thing, and we're gonna move on to the news in a minute, that they're gonna give people who are out of work in the restaurant industry $800. And I guess I'm still naive. I went and I told my wife, oh my God, because we've been worried about this, because we've both worked in the restaurant industry before, and it's huge in LA. And I was like, they're gonna give them $800 a week. And she was like, a week? And I was like, wait, actually, maybe I read it wrong. Maybe it was just $800 a month, which wouldn't be as good, but at least it's a good portion of your rent. No, I had read it really wrong. It was $800.
That's it.
Which is something, I guess, but
yeah, John. Very real. I know we got to move on really quickly. It's something, right? But even now, it's funny when people say that, like, sure, I'll take your $800. What is that gonna do for me? What, like, it'll give me gas, it'll buy me food. It's like you have to pick. It's Sophie's choice. You have to pick and choose who lives or who dies, essentially.
Yeah, it doesn't pay for your rent for even a month.
Right.
Helps
in
Los Angeles, I guess.
Yeah. Wow.
In Los Angeles, where the rent is absolutely, I live in a tiny, effectively one-room apartment, and my rent is close to double that. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.